Hi everyone, welcome back to the Careers Portal. If you're a student relying on NSFAS funding, you'll want to stick around because NSFAS has confirmed how much allowances will be for 2025. Careers Portal is your one-stop shop when it comes to finding learnerships, internships and bursaries, as well as any information you may need about studying and your future career.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Careers Portal. If you're a student relying on NSFAS funding, you want to stick around because in today's video we'll be breaking down exactly how 2025 NSFAS allowances will work. Careers Portal is your one-stop shop when it comes to finding learnerships, internships and bursaries, as well as any information you may need about studying and your future career. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, if you didn't know, provides comprehensive bursaries and student loans to deserving students and covers all expenses related to their studies. This is government funding which will cover the majority of the courses offered at the 26 public universities and 50 TVET colleges in South Africa. NSFAS funding includes money for tuition and registration fees as well as several NSFAS allowances. Let's break down the 2025 NSFAS allowances. NSFAS allowances are divided into 10 payments every year. The academic year commences in February and ends in November for most institutions, which means that NSFAS pays allowances from February until November only. NSFAS bursary holders at TVET Colleges and universities are entitled to allowances covering learning materials, living expenses for those non-catered residences, accommodation and transport for non-resident students. Distance learning students will receive different allowances. Distance university students who study less than 60% module credits in one academic year qualify for the learning material allowance only. Distance TVET college students qualify for the personal care allowance only. If you are a student at a TVET college or university and you have an NSFAS loan, you'll receive allowances for accommodation and learning materials. NSFAS said that the loan won't cover transport costs for students. As for how much 2025 allowances will be, the Minister of Higher Education announced that NSFAS allowance payments for the 2025 academic year will be increasing. University students will receive a 4% increase in NSFAS allowances, while TVET college students will receive an increase in NSFAS allowances from 10,000 Rand per annum to 14,600 Rand per annum, which represents a 46% increase.
NSFAS has now officially confirmed the 2025 NSFAS allowance amounts for the year. University students. University students in catered residences in metro areas will receive a 5,678 Rand learning materials allowance and a 65,993 Rand accommodation allowance. University students in catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a 5,678 Rand learning materials allowance and a 56,633 Rand accommodation allowance. University students in non-catered residences in metro areas will receive a 5,678 Rand learning materials allowance, a 52,000 Rand accommodation allowance, and a 17,160 Rand living allowance. University students in non-catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a 5,678 Rand learning materials allowance, a 42,640 Rand accommodation allowance, and a 17,160 Rand living allowance. University students with disabilities in catered residences in metro areas will receive a 6,240 Rand learning materials allowance and a 69,633 Rand accommodation allowance. University students with disabilities in catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a 6,240 Rand learning material allowance and a 60,273 Rand accommodation allowance. University students with disabilities in non-catered residences in metro areas will receive a 6,240 Rand learning materials allowance, a 52,000 Rand accommodation allowance, and a 20,800 Rand living allowance. University students with disabilities in non-catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a 6,240 Rand learning materials allowance, 42,640 Rand accommodation allowance, and a 20,800 living allowance. University students who don't live on residence will receive a 5,678 Rand learning materials allowance and a 17,160 Rand living allowance. University students with disabilities who don't live on residence will receive a 6,240 Rand living materials allowance and a 20,800 Rand living allowance. University students who live in catered residences don't qualify for a living allowance. They do, however, qualify for R3,167 personal care allowance for the year. University students who don't live on residence won't receive accommodation allowance and will instead receive a R8,190 transport allowance. For students attending university who are also living with disabilities will also receive human support and assistive devices. TVET College students. TVET College students in catered residences in metro areas will receive a R65,993 accommodation allowance. TVET College students in catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a R56,633 accommodation allowance. TVET College students in non-catered residences in metro areas will receive a R52,000 accommodation allowance and a R17,160 living allowance. TVET College students in non-catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a R42,640 accommodation allowance and a R17,160 living allowance. TVET College students with disabilities in catered residences in metro areas will receive a R69,633 accommodation allowance. TVET College students with disabilities in catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a R60,273 accommodation allowance. TVET College students with disabilities in non-catered residences in metro areas will receive a R52,000 accommodation allowance as well as a R20,800 living allowance. TVET College students with disabilities in non-catered residences in non-metro areas will receive a R42,640 accommodation allowance and a R20,800 living allowance. TVET College students who don't live on residence will receive a R17,160 living allowance. TVET College students with disabilities who don't live on residence will receive a R20,800 living allowance. TVET College students who live in catered residences don't qualify for a living allowance. They do, however, qualify for R3,167 personal care allowance for the year. TVET College students who don't live on residence. TVET College students who don't live on residence won't receive an accommodation allowance and will instead receive a R8,027 transport allowance for the year. Resident students attending TVET College and who are living with disabilities will also receive assistive devices.
So how will 2025 NSFAS allowance payments work? NSFAS has confirmed that for 2025, TVET College students will continue to have their allowances paid directly into their personal bank accounts. Students are urged to update their bank account details on the My NSFAS portal. Universities will continue to pay allowances to students directly in 2025. Until NSFAS announces a change in the payment strategy. Universities will have different ways of making these payments, and it's important that students consult their financial aid officers at their institutions to find out what steps to take next to secure the allowances. Head over to www.careersportal.co.za to find out more about NSFAS applications, how it works, NSFAS allowances, and anything else you would want to know about NSFAS funding. Comment down below what you're studying or planning to study, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for watching and see you next time.